Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on the IHI Call 13 on two-stage calls, rules, and procedures. My name is Nassima, and I'm going to be your moderator today. And before we start, I just want to share some informations with you. So firstly, we are recording this session and we will be publishing it on the IHI website. We will also publish the presentation slides. The call will be launched shortly and all the links and details of how to apply will be published on the IHI website and the Funding and Tenders portal. Another important point, if you have any questions, please use the chat function on the right corner of your screen and we will get them at the end of the presentations. So today we will have two presenters. We have Alessandro Chiodini, who is our call coordinator, and we also have Desmond Barry, who is our legal and intellectual property officer. So now I will hand over to Alessandro.
Thank you very much, Nassima, for this. So this presentation, as Nassima said, is divided in two main chunks of information. The more technical part related to how you should get prepared and then what you're going to prepare and submit on the funding and tender portal to prepare your application. And then there is a more, let's say, legal intellectual property information by my colleague Desmond. So I will kick off the presentation, then there will be a series of slides presented by me, and then another series of slides presented by my colleague Desmond. And then at the end, we wrap up and then we will be able to take some questions. So the idea is to present some participation rules related also to funding, intellectual property rights, what are the kind of templates that you need to take into consideration to prepare your proposal. Then if your proposal is successful after being evaluated, what are the steps for grant agreement and consortium agreement, and then some call timeline. So when all this is supposed to happen, and then we finish with some tip and tricks, a point to remember which are useful. So this is a webinar for Call 13 that has been designed as a two-stage call. So you might know that IHI run single-stage call and then two-stage call. So the peculiarity of these two-stage calls is that some industry consortium, which are a member of IHI or affiliated to IHI, identified a real healthcare challenge that needs to be addressed through some projects. So this is the challenge, and then the innovation that there is an applicant consortium, and then we will see later who are these applicants as stage one, for example, that contribute with some complementary expertise and idea, and then only at later stage, these ideas that the applicant has brought will be matched with the industry consortium to create a critical mass in order to prepare a full proposal. And then hopefully this will give us the possibility to have some impact when the proposal is becoming a project by the end of the two-stage calls. So in terms of, let's say, a little bit of timeline, it's important to remember that the Call 13 will be up and live on the Funding and Tender portal only as of the 2nd of July. So this is, so far, the call text, the full call text has not been published yet because it will open, it will be visible on the Funding and Tender portal on the day of opening, which is this Thursday. So if you would like to have, and you have not done so, for the time being, more information about the three topics that are going to be compose the Code 13, you can go on an IHI website, you go and apply for funding, and then in opportunities, you have all the details that we are allowed to externalize to you for the time being about this course. So you will see, you have already maybe followed a topic webinar for each of the topic that compose Code 13. But then just to remember, the first one is about a network to boost the next wave of European innovation in healthcare. Then the second one is about AI foundation in toxicology model and frameworks. And then the third one, it's about age-related immune-mediated disease. But then for the time being, you can go on the IHI website to have more information related to this. So as I said before, this is a two-stage call procedure, and then how this works. So we put together a nice colorful slides. So as I said at the call launch, 2nd of July, the topic text that has been approved in our annual work program will be available on the Funding and Tender portal. And this text, in the call text, you will see there are already identified some consortium members from the industry side. And then these are those consortium members from the industry side who had the idea. So you remember the first slide that I showed you. So meaning that the ones that are there are committed to bring the in-kind contribution and their expertise in order to have an impact on the proposal that is going to be funded. Now focusing on the stage one. So this is the short proposal submission. So meaning that will be only 20 pages proposal and few annexes that need to be submitted. So the applicants that are eligible for funding are those who are not in the pre-identified industry consortium member because they are already committed to be there at stage two. So at stage one, what we are looking at is applicants, consortium formed by applicants that are coming, for example, from academics, hospital, regulatory agency, patient organization, SMEs, or profit and legal entities with around turnover or less than 500 million. What is going to happen is that you have a window of time frame where you can prepare and submit your proposal. Then your proposal will be evaluated. And per topic, we will select only the first and the best one. And then this will be the only proposal which is going to stage two. And then in there, the applicant consortium or the successful proposal at stage one will be matched with the pre-identified consortium, which is present and indicated in the call document, and then needs to go to another round of evaluation, so the stage two evaluation, and then we will have the granting phase. So we'll transform the proposal into a project. And then once finally the grant agreement preparation is concluded, we can launch the projects. So, and then just to recap, the pre-identified are those who are responsible for the kind contribution. As you might know, IHI is a private-public partnership, so we are responsible. Each project needs to have at least 45% of the total eligible cost, which is coming from in-kind contribution from the private partners of IHI or contributing partner. But then this we can say it later. So in stage one and stage two, so in the two-stage evaluation, the identified consortium are the main driver for the topic definition. They identify their in-kind contribution, so what they would like to bring as a sort of in-kind, because we have several types of in-kinds. They're listed in the topic text, and then they're not eligible for funding because they already provide their in-kind, and then cannot participate at stage one. On the other way, the non-pre-identified is any other participant that can apply at stage one, which is not involved in the topic definition, and they could join the consortium afterwards, and then is eligible to get funding from the European Commission through the IHI. Okay, and so in terms of eligibility, I will hand it over to Desmond.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. So we're going to cover some basic slides now, which will acquaint the audience with some of the requirements, the legal requirements to join actual IHI calls. And we'll talk primarily first about the eligibility of legal entities. When we talk about legal entity, as we'll explain on the side, we're talking about it can be a company, it can be a university, but it's essentially an undertaking which has an independent legal personality under national law. And basically then the idea is that these independent legal entities then form the consortia, and then we'll talk about the consortium eligibility as well. So as we can see on the slide, first we're going to talk about what the legal entity is, then how we're going to basically show how that bit fits into the consortium, how the consortium then is eligible to participate, because obviously the eligibility functions at different levels. And then when we discuss that, then we'll look at the two real key aspects of eligibility is when is that legal entity eligible first to participate in the call and in the eventual project? And then secondly, when is the legal entity eligible and sometimes not eligible to receive funding? So Alessandro, if we go to the next slide. First things first, just the classic definition, which we put everywhere, which is how we define the legal entity means a natural person or a legal person created and recognized as such under union, national or international law, which has legal personality and the capacity to act in its own name, exercise rights, etc. So that's hard coded into the legal definition for all of Horizon Europe, and the IHI utilizes it as well. The key point here is that when considering if you are a legal entity, the key point is, are you in your own capacity or is your company able to create basically legal obligations, form contracts with other people, etc. If you're coming from a wider corporate group, then the key point would be, are you, if you're part of a wider corporate group, is your own individual part of that wider corporate group independent? Do they have their own derivation of the name? Are they recognized under the national law as specific to that country, etc.? So this is usually quite clear, but if there are any questions on this, obviously you can direct the query to the IHI office and we can provide clarification if necessary. And then once we understand what the legal entity is, then we talk about the legal entities come together to form the consortia, the applicant consortium, which is what Alessandro was talking about. And it's those applicant consortia that are made up of diverse legal entities that basically prepare the proposal and send the proposal in for evaluation by the independent experts. So we need to make sure that the consortia that you guys are actually forming is eligible. So as you can see here, the main primary point for the consortium itself to be eligible is that it has to have certain components which reflect the European focus. So we need at least one independent legal entity established in an EU member state. And then we need at least 2 other independent legal entities, each established either in a different EU member state or a Horizon Europe associated country. Now we'll talk about associated countries in a little bit, but the key point is it's what our colleague Carolina from the legal team refers to as the rule of 3. Basically, you should have at least 3 legal entities if following these criteria in your consortium, but frequently IHI consortia are composed of many, many more. It can be 10, it can be 15, it can be 20 or more independent entities. Next slide, please, Alessandro. And then when we talk about, I mentioned this, there's 2 aspects to the individual legal entity's ability to participate, and also to receive funding. So we basically say, in terms of participation, which is being involved in the project, which is separate from the funding eligibility, what we basically say is, in terms of participation, any legal entity, regardless of its place of establishment, and including legal entities from non-associated third countries or international organizations, may participate in actions under the program. Now, guys, what that really means is anybody, as long as they meet the criteria of being an independent legal entity, is eligible and welcome to participate in IHI projects, subject, of course, to a couple of provisos and exemptions, which we'll talk about in a future slide in a few minutes. But generally, in terms of participation, if you're an independent entity and you're from anywhere in the world, you're welcome to join Horizon Europe and by extension an IHI project. But that's separate from eligibility to receive funding, because eligibility to receive funding kind of reflects more where you're actually established and reflects the emphasis on obviously European R&D and those countries that are associated to Horizon Europe. So in terms of a legal entity's eligibility to receive funding, we basically say that in general, legal entities are entitled to receive funding from IHI if they are established in a member state, or if they're established in an associated country to Horizon Europe, or they're established in a low to middle income country. Now, we'll talk about the low middle income countries in a second on a different slide, but the key point is, if you can meet those 3 basic criteria, then by default, you're normally eligible to receive funding from IHI, unless, I'm going to talk about it right now, a couple of the exemptions which reflect the structure of the call. Because Alessandro said we're using a 2-stage call structure here, and the eligibility criteria there are modified by that. So as you can see from the slide, for 2-stage calls, the following legal entities are not eligible to receive funding. So anyone who's in the pre-identified industry consortium, which is what we call the constituent and affiliated entities that are associated with the private members, they're not eligible to receive funding because they're in the pre-identified industry consortium and they're providing, amongst other things, in-kind and financial contributions. So they don't receive funding. And secondly, any legal entities with an annual turnover of 500 million or more cannot receive funding. Now, that 500 million or more, that also takes into account if you are part of a wider corporate group. So that's something to bear in mind as well. We'll go to the next slide, Alessandro. And then when we talk about, I had in the previous slide, the EU members, the associated countries, the low middle income countries are generally eligible to participate. But if you come from a third country, if you were established in a third country, then you generally are not eligible to receive funding. And we have some examples of third countries here. Australia, which I'll talk about a little later on, but for the moment, for our purposes, Australia are not considered associated, therefore they're counted as a third country. And the US is definitely a third country. So if you are established in the US, you are not automatically eligible to receive funding in an IHI call. Now, we have an exemption here, which is basically in very, very rare circumstances where a legal entity is coming to a project and they are bringing something really essential. They could be exceptionally considered eligible to receive funding from IHI. This is a decision which is reached by the program office based on the information that's in the proposal and considered by the independent experts that will score the proposal. So it's a facility which we have when we have someone coming from a third country and they're bringing something really, really essential to the project. The idea is if theoretically the project would not be as effective without this entity's contribution and we're funding them to enable that contribution, then that's a kind of the prime scenario where essentiality can be used. But we'll leave that there for the moment. Alessandro, next slide. So I was talking about Australia a minute ago. So as I said, generally, as I said, anyone from anywhere on the planet, so long as you can basically meet that you're an independent legal entity, can participate. But we do have some exemptions, which are the first 3 points here. And these points have been prepared by the IHI legal team. So Carolina, Chiara, Martina, and Veronica put together these points for you. Basically, now we're launching Call 13, as you know. So for Call 13, IHI Call 13, legal entities established in China are prohibited from participating in any capacity in IHI actions. Now, this is not IHI itself. This is certain aspects of the wider Horizon Europe program. These restrictions have been applied. But if a legal entity is established in China, they cannot participate, they cannot receive funding, and they should not be in proposals. That does not, however, affect I speak again about the wider corporate group. If you have a Chinese company and they are established in Europe, for example, then it may be possible for them to participate normally. That's China. The second one then is Hungary. So the IHI legal team, we've already received a few queries about this, and I think everyone's aware that the situation in Hungary is evolving. So at the moment, we have no update as to any change. So we're going to apply the standard restrictions on Hungary that have been in place in the last few years, which is the vast majority of legal entities based in Hungary may participate and may receive funding. That's not a problem. But there is a list of basically about 30 legal entities that are public interest trusts that were established under the Hungarian Act of 2021. They may participate, but they may not receive funding. So if you have a Hungarian entity that are in your proposal, I would strongly advise you to just check against this list, which is available online, and then you'll be able to tell exactly what their status is. Frankly, the situation may change in the next few months, but as of the date of publication, as of today, that situation with the Hungarian entities has not changed. And I can't really give a time frame as to when it may change, but suffice to say, when the research family is informed that a change has been put in place, IHI will adapt at the same time. And then lastly, in terms of absolute restrictions, due to the continuing difficulties in Ukraine, we have a standing prohibition on legal entities participating if they're from Russia, Belarus, and the non-governmental parts, the primarily eastern parts of Ukraine as well. Legal entities that are established there may not participate in any capacity and may not receive funding. So they're the definite no's. But then we also have a couple of other noteworthy cases. The reason why the legal team have inserted these 2 points is because we've already received quite a few queries about it. So I alluded to this 2 slides ago. Right now, Australia, a lot of you would have seen in the media, they have actually concluded negotiations to join Horizon Europe. So they will become an associated country at some stage, but we have no delivery time on this. So at the moment, IHI is treating legal entities from Australia as a third country for Call 13. Something may actually kick in next year. It's broadly anticipated that they would enter what's called transitional measures as of 1st of January 2027, but we have nothing definite on that. So if you have a legal entity from Australia, you should, in terms of preparing your proposal, consider them to be from a third country. And I think that's the safest approach for the moment. But obviously, we'll be very welcoming to our Antipodean cousins when they join. And then secondly, in terms of Japan, again, this is something we've received a couple of queries on. And as you can see, we've prepared a couple of bullet points here. From the 1st of January 2026, so this year, Japan is they're what's called transitional arrangements. Now, what that means is IHI and the European Commission are treating Japan as if they are associated, but the final agreement hasn't actually been signed. So legal entities from Japan are eligible to participate and eligible to receive funding in IHI calls. The twist here is that when we get to GAP, when we get to grant agreement preparation and signature, we will check the status of this association agreement again. And if by the time we get to grant agreement signature, if the final legal agreement for association has not been signed by Japan and the European Commission, then we'll have to take those Japanese entities and change their status because they're not actually eligible to be they're not eligible for funding and they're not eligible to take the role of beneficiaries. So they won't be able to receive funding, and obviously then we'll have to change them to something more suitable, like perhaps associated partners who don't receive funding. So this is if you have a Japanese entity which normally would be requesting funding, if you have them in your proposal, this is something you need to pay particular attention to, because it'll be fine for the purposes of submission of the proposal. It will be fine for evaluation of the proposal, at least at the first stage, but then the situation could change, and it is sensitive, and it's something for the coordinators and the
Sorry, Desmond, you have been muted. I don't know what happened.
That's probably my own legal team muting me, so. All right, so sorry about that. All right, so this is a slide that the legal team have prepared, which, a picture says 1,000 words. So what we've done here is this refers to everything I've just talked about. And what it does is it maps out the EU Commission countries, it maps out the LMICs, it maps out the associated countries. So working from this, I think if you have this as a snapshot, you've got a pretty good idea of the range now of the Horizon Europe program, and you have an idea of the range of those countries that can actually receive funding. So you'll note first, the European Union is obviously in blue, and it's not just the immediate countries, but we've also plugged in what we call the overseas territories or dependencies as well. So obviously quite prominently, we have Greenland as an EU territory. That's our EU. And it also includes things like French Guiana and those countries, Solomons, etc. So that's clear. And then the second one is what we call the low to middle income countries. Now, if you're from a low to middle income country, which you can see is quite extensive, so it ranges from South America across Africa into into Asia and also down to New Guinea, etc. That's very broad. And the idea is because of the nature of these countries, and because of sometimes the valuable contributions they can bring, these low to middle income countries, if you are a legal entity from these countries, you are principally able to receive funding from IHI. So you can participate in the proposal, you can receive funding in the proposal. The gray areas are the third countries. So obviously you have the United States, you have Brazil. As I said, Australia at the moment, as far as we're concerned, is gray. So they're a third country. That I fully anticipate that's going to change, but we have no firm timeline as to the delivery of that legislation. Russia, China, India, Saudi Arabia, some parts of the Middle East, they're all third countries. So legal entities from there can participate, are welcome to participate, but they will not receive funding. And as a result, if they want to join, it would be anticipated they would join perhaps as an associated partner who would participate at their own costs, but they could theoretically receive funding from their own national authorities. And then lastly, we have in the middle, we have the associated countries, places like Canada, Iceland, Ukraine, Egypt, and as I said, now Japan and New Zealand. And if you're coming from those associated countries, then because that country has associated with not just Horizon Europe, but Pillar 2 of Horizon Europe, which is where IHI lives, then you are eligible to receive funding from IHI for Call 13. So the legal team, as I said, we prepared this slide. We're quite happy with it because it's an up-to-date snapshot of exactly where everybody lives. Next slide. Okay, and then so that's our eligibility. We're going to talk very quickly about IP or intellectual property rights. Now, the idea of these two slides is just to provide a quick overview of how intellectual property works in IHI projects. If you're familiar with IP in Horizon Europe, you will find much familiar here. There's a couple of tweaks which reflect the IHI legal specificities, our own legal basis, but most of this will be very familiar to those who have participated in the Horizon Europe projects already. So the top half of the slide first. This is literally just a very, very simple workflow. So On the left-hand side, we have background identification. Now, it's clear that if work of any value is going to be done in an IHI project, it really depends upon what the participants, what the legal entities in the consortium bring, because IHI at its very heart, we are a collaborative enterprise, right? The projects we run are collaborative. And if we're going to run these projects, which are collaborative at a very large scale, some of the IHI projects are very large, then obviously we need our participants to bring background and to share that background and to make it available to everyone else. So background for our purposes here, we define underneath in the blue box, and this is taken from the grant agreement, which is any data, know-how, information, whatever its form or nature, including rights such as IP rights, that is A, held by the beneficiaries before they acceded to the agreement, before they joined the grant agreement, and is needed to implement the action or exploit the results. So the second one, B there, is super important because we want people to bring assets, which enriches the project, which enables the work, which enhances the results, but it needs to be relevant. So how this will work is, if your proposal is funded, after getting through the 2 stages, then there will be a meeting, a series of meetings, and the consortium will look at what everyone has, and then will agree the background. And then that list of assets, whether it's data, whether it's know-how, whether it's something physical, like cartridges or something, that will be articulated and enumerated in the consortium agreement, which I'll come to in a later slide after Alessandro presents a couple of other points. But the idea is that the background is agreed and written down in the consortium agreement, and then everyone has a record, and then everyone knows the expectations that they are operating under. Everyone knows what they're supposed to bring. Everyone knows what everyone else is bringing, and then they can plan their work in the program or in the project on that basis. So that's background. And then moving to the right-hand side, the big blue box, as you can see, it's an iterative process. So we introduce the background to the project, and then you share the background with everyone else in the project who needs it to get their own work done. And that's done via access rights. And then using the background, results are generated. And then results we define again at the bottom as results are any tangible or intangible effect of the action, any output, which is data, know-how, information, whatever its form or nature, which is capable of attracting IP protection. So results can be something like a publication, or it can be a set of data, or it can be a platform which is used for hosting results. It's very, very wide. But the idea is that the results are the expected outputs of the actual project, and they're articulated through the description of action, which is part of the grant agreement. And those results can be further shared by everyone in the consortium according to the access rights, which are defined first in Article 16 of the grant agreement, and then also in the consortium agreement. So that's the first IP slide, and then we have another one which Alessandro's going to bring up, which is just kind of a few other points. Yeah, so this is just a few things we like to flag for our participants in relation to IP. So as I said a minute ago, IP or in IHI, it derives from a few different places. We have the standard Horizon Europe Model Grant Agreement, Article 16, supplemented by the specific rules in Annex 5 of that grant agreement. Now, just for the lawyers in the room, your IPR is Article 16, Article 5, but Article 5 has a couple of different sections. It has the section which is relevant for the joint undertakings, and then it has the further section which is relevant for IHI. So just if you're studying Annex 5, just make sure that you're getting all of the IHI relevant information. And then thirdly, also where relevant, we can insert IPR provisions into the call conditions as well. So, I mean, Alessandro will say this, I will say this. For everyone who's on the call, it's super important that you really read the call conditions and understand exactly A, the rules that apply to it, B, any additional IP considerations, and then C, obviously what the outputs and the expectations for IHI are. And this is something, that occasionally we have problems with because people either reply or they're running the project and then they forget about what's in the call conditions and then there's an issue. So really make sure that you understand the conditions, the terms, the rules of engagement in terms of what's in the call topic text itself. And then the next point, which is something which needs explanation, we're going to do it quickly. If you are in an IHI project and your project is being funded and you are generating those results that I just talked about, if at any stage you want to either transfer those results or grant an exclusive license for the use of those results to a third party outside of the EU, the perfect example here is the US. Then under the legislation, IHI has what's called a right to object. So how this works is, and we've done this in the previous 12 calls in IHI, how this works is you should notify the program office and say, dear IHI, we've generated these results in the project. We now want to transfer, for example, these results to our New York office to apply for worldwide intellectual property protection. And then we'll do a quick check that you're not transferring anything super sensitive. And then we'll just grant a waiver. Or you can, even if it's particularly sensitive, you can apply for a waiver before you actually sign the grant agreement as well. So this is something which you need to be aware of. It's something that IHI takes quite seriously, but it's something which we're very practical about as well. So it's there, you should be aware of it. If you have any further questions, there's a bit on this in the guide for applicants, which Alessandro is going to talk about, which is available on our website. And then if you have any further questions, please engage with the applicant's mailbox. The question will come through to the IHI team, and then our two IP specialists, Martina and Veronica, will take care of it for you. They'll respond to you. So that's right to object. Next, affordable available provisions is 3A, which applies to some of our topics, but 3A doesn't apply to the present topic, so I'm not going to cover this. But just to know, it's something which frequently crops up. Next one is results ownership list. Now, at the end of the project, after the 5 or 6 years that the project actually runs for, all the beneficiaries, all the participants will create this what's called results ownership list. Now, this is A, super important, but B, very useful. The idea is that there will be a final list of absolutely every single result that has been generated during the project and who owns it, who generated it, who owns it. And this is important because it then allows IHI to understand, for example, in terms of the right to object that I just spoke about, but also in terms of future iterations of the program, metrics, etc. It's useful to understand how many results were generated and which public entities generated them, which industry entities generated them. So this is a departure from Horizon 2020, and it's something we always remind all of the participants about. And then last point for IP. Last point in IP is that there's an emphasis on exploitation open science. So this is a facility which exists in Horizon Europe. I've never seen it used in IHI, but we always remind people, if possibly you generate something in the project and you don't want to exploit it, you don't want to use it, those unexploited results can be matched with interested parties in the Horizon Results platform, which is a program-wide facility, which is really interesting because if you have these unwanted results, you feed them into the platform, and then other third parties who are not in the project who have an interest in your results can pick them up and use them. And it's a really, really great facility. But so far, we haven't had anyone from IHI use it because usually our participants are quite excited about their results. And then just we have a reminder at the bottom. As I said, Grant Agreement Article 16 is where the rules are found. But in the Consortium Agreement, and I'll talk about the Consortium Agreement and the Grant Agreement after Alessandro's next section, the practical way that IP is going to be handled is going to be expressed in the consortium agreement. So that's just to bear in mind. IP really comes from two places: the grant agreement, what's in there, which never changes really, and then what's in the consortium agreement, which gives flexibility as to, for example, how access rights should be requested and how they should be handled. So that's everything on IP. Alessandro's going to take back over and.
Thank you very much, Desmond. So the next part of the presentation, the next section is about proposal template and some evaluation criteria. So now you have understood who is eligible for applying, who is eligible for taking funds from IHI, from the European Commission. So now it's some practical information how you would prepare your proposal and how this proposal is going to be assessed. So as said, so the main landing page for you in order to prepare a proposal is the funding and tender portal. So here I put the screenshots of where you need to go in order to have more information, all the detailed information related to Code 13, but in general to any code that you would like to apply. So you have on the left side a quick search. You can search for IHI Code 13, and then normally there should be some results popping up, and then there will be at least let's say 3 lines, one per each topic. You click on the line of the topic that you would like to select your proposal. And then there are some sections which are related to expected impact, scope, objectives, and then any other information that is related to that should be useful in order for you to prepare the proposal. And then there are other sections with some templates and so on, and then annexes, which are more related to the general horizon. That should help you in getting all the information you need before you start preparing your proposal. So then at the end of the description of each topic, you have, I would like to apply for this topic, you click, and then you go to another landing page where you need to fill it in and upload all the information that is needed in order to prepare your proposal. So this is a test mode. So it's, let's say, 90% of what you are going to see when you enter the section of the funding and tender portal where you need to prepare your application. And then you will see there is a deadline. So 8th of October, you have the topic with an hyperlink that goes back to the funding and tender portal. And then at the bottom of the page, you have most important, the templates. So in this case, there will be 2 templates, which I'll describe a little bit later, that you need to download, fill it in, and re-upload in the funding and tender portal in order for your proposal to be admissible and eligible. The template which are here are related to the part B, so the description, the narrative part of the proposal, and the type of participants. But then I'm going to describe those later. The most important part is that you will see at the same time, you will have the proposal part A template. So the part A is the administrative part of the proposal where you need to insert, for example, the acronym of the proposal, the full title, all the beneficiaries that are going to take part in the action, if there is any participant declaration, and the budget itself. So this is, I put here a screenshot because normally this is a new, let's say, visual that the funding and tender portal has been developed in order for you to prepare the proposal. If you have been submitting proposal in Horizon, especially in IHI, until recently there was another layout which was more similar to a PDF that you need to fill it in. Now this has been changed because there is a change in the IT infrastructure which was behind, and then they changed this into this dynamic form. So when you need to submit, you need to prepare and fill in your part A, you will have this dynamic form where, for example, for code 13, you will have some general information. So as it here, so the acronym, the proposal title, the abstracts, the keywords, so on and so forth. You will need to fill in some declaration, you need to fill in information about the participant, and then information about the participant, meaning not only the PIC number, the name, but also all the beneficiary which will be included and taking part in the action as well. And then you will have a budget section. In this case, the budget section, since we are talking about stage 1 proposal, is only 1 line. So typically, applicants, they put the maximum grant amount, which is mentioned in the call text. Also, you see there is some color coding. So when everything is green, meaning that you're good to go. So unless there is a yellow sign, meaning that something needs to be corrected, but then this is not a blocking issue for you to submit the proposal. On the other hand, if you have a red dots, meaning that something is wrong, and then you will not be able to submit the proposal. So you need to check that everything is most likely green, or at least you should have some yellow, which are not the blocking issues. And then at the end of this page, there is some validation button that you can click in order to see if there is an error in validating, and then you can recheck and redo things in order to be correct 100%. So basically, your proposal will be prepared in part A and part B and another accent, and one another annex. So the part B is the narrative part of the proposal. So I said you should take what is in the funding and tender portal, download it, fill it in, and re-upload. Okay, the same information that you are able to find on the funding and tender portal, just to ease the task, is also available on the IHI website. And then is divided, the part B, in 3 main chunks, which are excellence, impact, and implementation. And then this, just to give you a preview, will be the same criteria that will be used by external experts in order to assess the proposal. Okay, since we are talking about first stage proposal, it's a research innovation action, and the maximum length is 20 pages. So if you upload a Part B which exceeds the 20 pages, you will receive a warning message like the one which is in white saying, here I did some testing. So you see the uploaded document says 300 pages. Please be aware that the limit is 20, but then this will be not a blocking issue to submit the proposal, meaning that if you submit a Part B of your proposal with 300 pages, all the proposal from the 21st onwards will be deleted, will be marked as excessive page. So this will be not visible by the applicant and by us as well. But then this will be not an impediment for you to submit the proposal, okay? If there is only a warning here. And then, as I said, the other part, you will see this is the bottom part to the right part of the screen that I was showing before. You have basically the Part A that you need to fill it in manually for each of the participants. And then once you download, you fill it in the Part B and the annex, which is the type of participant. You need to upload in the system and then submit the proposal. Also, you see at the bottom of the screen, you have the online manual, the IT help desk, and then the IT how-to, which will redirect you to the another page of the Funding Contender portal where all the information is available if you have some doubts about it. So in order for you to submit a proposal, you have Part A, Part B, and type of participant. Type of participant is an Excel file where you need to put information line per line about each beneficiary of the consortium and let's say their affiliation. So if there are academic, if there are SMEs, if there are any other type. And then you will see that there is an asterisk next to Part B and type of participant because both are mandatory in order for you to submit the proposal. So if something is missing, you cannot submit the proposal. Then it's very, very important that you use the template that you find on the Funding Contender portal. Again, you fill it in and then you re-upload and submit your proposal to the submission tool. So, and then some highlights. So the indicative contribution for each topic is the maximum JU contribution. And the estimated industry is indicated also in the call text. Since it's a stage 1, you should have at least a draft plan for dissemination, exploitation, and communication activities, but then the full set of this will be assessed only as second stage. So stage 1, you should have only a draft plan, and then it's not required at stage 1, but then it's good if you mention somewhere that you have some clinical studies that you would like to develop, but then there will be a full annex that you need to prepare only at stage 2. Then once the proposal is submitted, we do as IHI admissibility and eligibility check, and then we give access to proposal to individual experts, which are composing a panel. Typically, we have 3 to 5 experts per proposal, which are going to individually evaluate the proposal according to their expertise, which normally is complementary in order to assess all the proposal. And then all these experts, they prepare their individual report. There will be normally typically one of these experts who act as rapporteur also. So it's compiling all the individual reports in one meaningful report, which will be discussed during the consensus meeting. And then at the end, we have the evaluation summary report, which is drafted based on the input of all the experts, and then we do the rank list. So our job in IHI is to receive the proposal, deem those who are admissible and eligible, give access to external experts so they can evaluate the proposal, and then prepare a rank list from per topic, from the first to the bottom of the list. And then when the rank list is done, we give it to our governing board for approval, and then we inform the applicants. Meaning in this case, if you're talking about stage 1 to stage 2, the first proposal on the top rank list will be received a link to prepare the full proposal, and then will be matched with the industry consortium, pre-identified industry consortium. All the other proposals from the second until the end are on the reserve list, and then all the proposals that are below thresholds, it will be marked as rejected. Okay. So, and then as said, so there are minimum 3 independent experts that assess this proposal. Each proposal is evaluated as it is. So what you have written in the proposal is what is counted. some sub-criteria are listed in the evaluation form. And then you will see that excellence, impact, and implementation are the same criteria that are used and then mentioned in the template part B for you to prepare the proposal. And then the scoring is between 0 and 5, with a pass mark individual for each criterion of 3, but then the total pass mark is 10 out of 15. And then here some tips. So it's important that you read all the expected impact, all the objective, all the scopes related to the topic where you would like to prepare and submit your proposal, because these are included in the call text, and then this is very important for you to adhere your proposal to what is requested, because your Bible for the assessment, for the evaluation, and then this is the same that we are telling to the expert, is what you have submitted proposal, but then what you would like to have as, let's say, ideal topic text, which is included in the funding and tender portal. Also, if when you describe your impacts, please provide some meaningful and measurable estimates, because we need to know if what you're proposing as expected impact are measurable, are achievable, and so and realistics. And then for the implementation, prepare some clear graphs, so visual helps a lot in order to understand what you would like to do. Also, do not list all the deliverable, because in any case, this will be included as stage 2. Okay. And then I hand it over back to Desmond to some difference between grant agreement and consortium agreement.
Thanks, Alessandro. So we're just going to cover 2 quick slides here because we're coming towards kind of the implementation part of it. So I'm very briefly going to acquaint everyone with 2 key documents here, and then I'm going to give a warning at the end. So first things first, I keep mentioning the actual grant agreement. So the grant agreement is, if your proposal is funded, if you were successful through the 2 rounds and IHI funds your proposal, then everyone will be becoming involved in the actual grant agreement. The beneficiaries will sign it via an accession form, and others will be plugged in. So the grant agreement we use is the standard Horizon Europe model grant agreement, all right, which is quite comprehensive. And it covers everything from how a beneficiary basically reports their costs all the way through IP, intellectual property, all the way through to dispute resolution and things like litigation and recovery of undue funds. So it's a very, very comprehensive document. There's some IHI specificities there, which I was mentioning earlier on in relation to IP. They're in Annex 5, and they reinforce or enhance some elements of the actual grant agreement. So again, for the lawyers on the call, it's not enough just to be familiar with the standard 44 articles. You've got to be familiar with Annex 5 as well. And as I said in the last bullet point here, it is signed between the IHI JU, so our executive director, and the coordinator, and then everyone else signs the accession form within 30 days from the date of that signature of the office. So the grant agreement itself, if you haven't been involved in another Horizon Europe project or another IHI project, much there will be familiar. The articles don't change. The articles are essentially set in stone with some minor variations. So, but if you are new to Horizon Europe and to IHI, then I strongly advise you to basically take a look at the AGA to understand what you're getting into. I'll come back to this in a second, but the key document here maybe is not the grant agreement itself, but it's what's called the annotated model grant agreement, which is available online. What this annotated version does is it takes the normal grant agreement, which is about 70 pages long, and adds a couple of hundred pages of explanations, examples, and best case and best practice. So it's extremely useful for someone who is new to the Horizon Europe paradigms. So I'd very much direct you there. Now, as I said, that's something which everybody signs, doesn't change, is pretty much set in stone. On the right-hand side, we have the consortium agreement. So the consortium agreement is a different animal. The consortium agreement, first and foremost, if you think about it, the grant agreement sets out the high-level rules. The consortium agreement kind of sets out the rules for the day-to-day operation of those rules by the consortium. So as I said there in the first point, it covers, rights and obligations, governance, liability, intellectual property. The second point is IHI is not a signatory. We don't sign the consortium agreement. It's individual and specific to the consortium. But that's good because it gives some flexibility as to how you guys actually run the project. If you think about it, if your project is funded, IHI is entrusting implementation of the project to you. And our approach is, these are the high-level rules, which are in the grant agreement, so you have to follow those. But then we give flexibility as to how you actually do things day to day, and we're not going to be too invasive. But this leads into the third point, which is the terms of the consortium agreement must comply with the grant agreement. So there can't be any conflict or contradictions. And if in the templates, which I'll refer to in a second, usually there's a paragraph there which says, look, in the event of conflict between the consortium agreement and the IHI grant agreement, the IHI grant agreement takes precedence. And this is something that we are quite insistent upon. So this is something that everyone on the call needs to be aware of. As I said, you can adapt the consortium agreement to the needs of each action, with each project within certain parameters. And lastly, in terms of the content, we need, before the project starts, confirmation from you that the consortium agreement has been agreed. So when we get to grant agreement signature, before the actual document, the grant agreement is signed by IHI's executive director, the legal team needs confirmation that the consortium agreement has all been agreed. And the logic here is, frankly, if you guys can't agree how your project is going to run, then IHI is not going to sign a grant agreement directing millions and millions and millions of euros your direction. So this is something that we have for every single IHI project, and much of the wider Horizon Europe family has exactly the same approach. So what will happen is, prior to grant agreement, we'll be expecting an email saying, dear whoever the science officer is, we confirm that the terms of the consortium agreement have been agreed between ourselves. It's all finalized and now it's been circulated for signature. And on the basis of that, then we can proceed to grant agreement signature. And we're not going to sign the grant agreement without it. It's just that clear. Next, in terms of the consortium agreement itself, there are a couple of templates already available. There's one template which is prepared by the IHI private members. So the industry associations, FPA, COSIR, Europa Bio, MedTech Europe. They prepared collectively one template which is used in an awful lot of IHI actions, and that's available on their website. But also there's also the DESCA model, which some projects use, which is kind of more simplified. In our experience, if you use the DESCA model for an IHI project, which is normally quite complex, you kind of end up building upon the DESCA, which means you kind of end up close to the industry template anyway. But we do give you that discretion. It's up to you. So they're the two agreements. Now, this is the warning, which I really need everyone to understand on the call. If you are becoming involved in an IHI project, and it doesn't matter what capacity you are, whether you're a beneficiary, whether you're a third party, whether you're an affiliated entity, whether you're doing a lot in the project, or whether you're not doing much in the project and you're more of a supporting role, what's absolutely essential here is that you understand what you have legally signed up to. So you have to understand what's in the grant agreement. You have to understand what your obligations are. You have to understand how you should properly report costs, because if you do not follow the procedures for reporting the costs, then you will not be reimbursed for those costs. And we've had everyone, all throughout the Horizon Europe family, we've had multiple cases of legal entities who, run up 1-2 million euros worth of costs, and they don't follow the procedures. And then the granting authority, such as IHI or one of the agencies, turns around and says, well, we're sorry, we know you've taken these costs and you've done the work, but you haven't actually reported this properly, and therefore we can't reimburse you. And then the beneficiaries, has a shortfall of a couple of million euros. So this is the warning from the legal team. If you don't follow the rules that's in the grant agreement and the consortium agreement, then there's not a lot that IHI can actually do for you, which leads to the box at the bottom, which is the recommendation is that if you're going to be signing an IHI grant agreement, you should take independent legal advice or use your in-house legal team to review what the documents are, what the obligations are, and what the criteria is. Otherwise, you incur costs, they can't be reimbursed, or the even worse scenario is you reimburse costs, you don't follow the procedures, but you've been paid in the meantime, and then IHI has to come after you to recover those costs, in which case you'll be getting a very angry letter from Chiara from our legal team, who's our litigation specialist, and she's very tough. So if you take one takeaway today from the IHI legal team, it's you have to understand what you're signing up to. If you're a scientist, make sure that your legal team, your legal representatives read these agreements, so you understand what you're supposed to do, and also what your rights are. in terms of access rights, what you're entitled to in the agreement, not just in terms of funding, but in terms of access to other people's background, access to the results, because it can be a very enriching experience, this sharing environment that we try to foster. But there also has to be rules for accountability, etc. So that's the grant agreement and the CA. Alessandro, next slide. Yeah, and then it's back to Alessandro for timelines.
Yeah, a few words about timelines. So we have talked about where you need to go in order to prepare your proposal. But then just to recap some timelines. So 2nd of July is the launch of the call. This will be accessible on the Funding Contender portal. The deadline, it's 8th of October. So typically there is a deadline for each given call in Horizon is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 5 o'clock. So this is the ultimate deadline. And we will do the evaluation as described before between October and November for the short proposal, and then we will inform the applicants, the successful and the unsuccessful applicants, before the end of December. And then for the first one, who is kindly asked to take on board the stage 2, so the full proposal preparation. The deadline is on the 21st of April, and then again we will do a second round of evaluation between May, June, and then the outcome to the applicants will be done in by the end of June, most typically, and then the grant agreement preparation should be finalized by October 2027 with the grant agreement signature. So, and then, yeah, sorry, there was call 11, but then it's 13. So we forgot to change the heading of the slides. So now we would like to finish with some points to remember. So it is important, as described by Desmond and myself, so the minimum condition to participate in any Horizon call, and specifically the one from IHI, is three independent legal entities from a different member state or associate countries, and then one should be established in a member state. The page limit is 20 for 20 pages for the short proposal. It's a discussion about given topic within potential applicant consortium members of the identified industry consortium is prohibited because you might want to interfere in the preparation and discussion. Also, the first rank proposal will be invited to submit a full proposal to the stage 2, and then the other will stay in the reserve list until the full cycle of stage 1 and stage 2 has been completed. So all the information that you would like to know is either available on the IHI websites or on the Funding Contender portal, and then ensure that all information is described in order to the expert to assess your proposal. Use the templates, which is available on our website or on the Funding Contender portal. Also, check if the coordinator is financially viable, and do not, if you would like to have some more information, you have some doubts, you can contact the IHI office to the info@IHI, but do not please contact the industry topic writers. And then here I would like to finish with some reference document that you can they are available on the Funding Contender portal or on our website as well. And then with this, I would like to conclude.
Thank you, Desmond and Alessandro, for the presentation. So before we move on to the Q&A, I just want to promote the last webinar we have for Call 13. So we will have it this afternoon at 2 p.m. Brussels time, and it will be the topic on the AI Foundation Toxicology Model and Framework. So if you are not registered to this one, I will invite you to do so. So now we can open the Q&A. So I will start with the first question. So someone is asking, in the call text for topic 1, the network one, the contribution from pre-identified industry consortium are indicated in a very general way. Is it possible to have further specific information in order to ensure complementarity with the applicant consortium contributions?
Maybe. Okay, so what I'd like to do is, I know the FSTP generated a lot of questions yesterday, so I can answer in general terms, because otherwise we're going to get pulled into the FSTP a lot. But let me just say that the reason why the contribution from industry is described, in such general terms in the call topic text is that IHI recognizes that even between now and the start of the grant agreement, these numbers are going to change depending upon the requirements of the overall final consortium, right? So it's advantageous that the numbers are actually reasonably broad and that the assets being brought are broad, because frankly, the landscape is going to change by the time the actual project starts. So how about this? I would imagine that closer to the time of particularly when projects start, there will be more complementarity between the industry requirement or the industry contributions and what's needed in terms of project implementation. But that's going to be very much that's going to be a creature of the time. At the moment, I don't think we can basically give any guidelines as to how those numbers and how that contribution is going to evolve for a specific topic.
Thank you, Desmond. The next question is on the evaluation. Are proposals submitted by the applicant consortium evaluated in stage 1 by the members of the pre-identified industry consortium?
Oh, I like that question. No, it's actually I really like that question. So no, it's very important that everyone understands, as Alessandro said quite clearly, the job of the pre-identified industry consortium is to bring in-kind and expertise, and they have nothing to do with the first stage. So at some stage after the end of the first stage, they'll be informed of who the winner of the competitive first round is, obviously, because then they have to combine. But every proposal which is suitable for evaluation will be evaluated by IHI's independent experts and IHI's independent experts only. So the pre-identified industry consortium has no role in the evaluation process at the first stage. The proposals come in, the independent experts treat them all equally. They score on what's presented to them, and then there'll be a winner, because we can only have one winner at stage 1, and then that winning applicant consortium goes forward to the second round and prepares a full proposal with the industry consortium.
Thank you. Can different multiple legal entities from the same country participate?
That's no problem. I think the key point is, as long as they are independent entities, they're independent of each other, then you can have, and we frequently do, for example, have multiple entities from Germany or France or Ireland or Spain. So that in itself is not a blocking issue.
Thank you. Now someone is saying that in a previous IHI project, we successfully included a US partner who brought some valuable data sets to the project. Is it still the case that we can have essential US entities as partners pending review by the evaluation committee?
Yes, but I would tweak that slightly. Everything that the querist is saying is functionally correct, but I'll tweak the end. So on my slide, what I basically said was, if someone is coming from a third country, by default, they're not eligible to receive funding. But indeed, as obviously happened in the previous case, this US entity was given exceptional funding because they were bringing these very valuable data sets to the project. So this is fine. The bit that I would tweak is the independent experts will evaluate the value of the contribution, and the independent experts will form an opinion as to whether this US or other third country legal entity should receive funding. But the tweak is that the final decision is not by the independent experts. The final decision is actually by the IHI program office. So, but if you have had this happen in a previous project, from your perspective, the process will be the same. So in the proposal, then there should be a note made that these guys would require funding, yes.
Thank you. Someone would like some clarification whether FTEs incurred by employees located in the US can be declared as part of the industrial in-kind contribution. This person believes under previous IMI/IHI arrangement, a limited amount of non-EU effort could be accepted under certain condition. Is this still the case? And if so, what threshold apply?
So we have in the topic text what we call a non-EU threshold. That's fine. But I think the broader point is there is a difference, because you're referring to IMI2. There is a major difference between IMI2 and IHI in how we engage with a third party, primarily the US legal entities. So the short answer is yes, this is possible. We can have FTEs incurred in the US and counted as let's call it a in-kind contribution from industry to the project. But the parameters are slightly different. So the FTE would have to be from a constituent or affiliated entity of one of the IHI private members. So if we take an example again of the US, if, for example, it's a US-based pharma company, if they're basically, one part, an independent legal entity, but somehow attached to one of the FPA members' corporate group. So just by way of example, if it's Sanofi US, then yes, this is possible. The FTEs will contribute as what's called non-EU in kind. It will be subject to the threshold that's in the topic text, but more importantly, you will have to engage that US-based entity specifically in the project. You can't report their costs unless you plug the US-based entity into the specific project. And that's the difference from IMI2. So that US-based entity will have to take a role. It'll have to either take a role as a beneficiary, which then we'll have to use essentiality to bring them in, or they could also engage as what's called an associated partner case B, which allows non-European entities to contribute in kind to IHI projects if one of their sister companies is in there. So without derailing the entire conversation, what I would do is I'd refer you to two places. One, the guide for applicants, where we prepared a specific section on associated partner case B that the legal team, we contributed to a lot. But also there's financial guidances and webinars where this is discussed as well. You'll find that super useful. If in the end you need more information or you're not quite sure, then again, use the applicant's mailbox, send a specific question, and the legal team can give you more information.
Thank you. Someone is asking if Israel is an associated country.
Yes, legally at the moment, Israel is still a associated country to Horizon Europe and IHI. So if you remember the map that I presented earlier on, legal entities from Israel, legal entities that are established in Israel are eligible both to participate and receive funding in IHI Call 13.
Then the next one is about IP. So the person is asking, what about the IP for startups?
That's a pretty broad question. Actually, okay. I think I understand the thrust. Let me put it this way: if you're coming from an SME, then you are bringing IP assets which you are understandably guarding. So let me put it this way: what you bring into the project, if you're submitting it as background, for example, you remember the slide I presented earlier. You are the owner of that asset. So you can submit your background with confidence because the access rights that I talked about are for a specific purpose. So if you bring your background will be shared to other beneficiaries so they can get their own work done, or so they can provide some additional research on it. But under no circumstances can someone in the project actually take your asset or your IP and then commercialize it. And if someone tried to do that, they would get a very angry letter from Carolina or Chiara. So that's not, I'm completely confident that you can bring your asset and it will be protected. But if you bring it into the project and somebody really likes your asset and you want to commercialize it, you as the owner have the freedom to do that. Okay. So SMEs should not be wary or nervous of participating in IHI projects and contributing to IHI projects. But this is something I really have to ram home. If you are joining an IHI project, particularly for an SME, and I know there may be financial constraints and pressures, but you have to understand the terms of the grant agreement and the consortium agreement that you're going to sign, because you're signing legal obligations, and both the other project members and IHI are going to be expecting you to honor those agreements, and they're not easy to walk away from, particularly in the middle of a project. So SME owners, IP are protected. It's a great opportunity. You'll get access rights to other people's IP under certain circumstances, but you have to follow the rules of the game. But once you follow the rules of the game and you're in the game, you're quite safe.
Thank you. The next one is on evaluation. Is the first evaluation of proposals done only by external expert, or are IHI representative topic promoters also part of the panel?
I think Alessandra's our expert there. Do you want to take that one, Alessandra?
Yeah. So all evaluation, regardless of the fact they are first stage, stage 2, or single stage, are done by external experts. The external expert needs to have a contract which is signed by them and countersigned by us. But then before giving access to the proposal that they're going to evaluate, we'll do a conflict of interest check. And then there are rules to make if the expert that is going to assess a given proposal has a particular conflict. So this expert can come from any, let's say, world, so industry, academia, regulatory science, and so on, but then he or she does not have any conflict with the proposal that is going to assess or any other proposal which is competing for the same funds, namely within the same topic.
Thank you, Alessandro. Now the next one is a question with sub-questions, so I will read them all. Can a large company be a beneficiary first? How could it participate in order to receive a grant? Then, can two companies from the same group located in different countries both be beneficiaries? And finally, would they count as two companies from the two different countries?
Okay, so that's, we can answer these questions. That's quite, the short answer is it depends, but let me try and answer in general terms. And I'm going to preface my answer with the suggestion that this is not a company which is attached, either constituent or affiliated to one of our private members. So that we're going to assume that this company is not either a pharmaceutical company or a medtech or whatever. So in those regards, a company is free to receive funding in IHI as long as it doesn't exceed, as I said, the 500 million annual turnover cap, and that includes a wider corporate group. Okay, that's point one. Two, if the company is established in, as we mentioned earlier, a European country, a EU member state, or an associated country, or a low to middle income country, then they are definitely eligible to take the role of beneficiary, because to be a beneficiary in a grant agreement, the key requirement to be a beneficiary is that you have to be eligible for funding. So it's a circular logic. If you are eligible to receive funding because you're from an EU member state, you can become a beneficiary. And if you're a beneficiary, then you can receive funding and you can also report your costs. So this is clear. In terms of then, if you have multiple legal entities from the same company, that goes back to maybe the first slide I actually presented, which is you can have them in the project if they are clearly demonstrably and legally independent of each other. And I think a distinction here has to be drawn, and this is a question we get occasionally, is are they independent legal entities within the same corporate group, or are they just branches of the same company? And that's an important legal distinction. So as I said on slide one, are these legal entities able to actually perform contracts on their own? Do they have legal title, perhaps, to property? If I do a search on the company registration online resource, can I see that these entities have different directors or different management structures? That's the key point. If they are indeed separate, independent legal entities, then yes, we can have two or three or multiples from the same country in the same project. That's actually not a problem. And indeed, if they're all based in Europe, then theoretically, or an associated country or an LMIC, they could all take the roles of beneficiary. Now, that wouldn't be the optimum model. And again, I would direct people to the guide for applicants on this. But yes, it is possible.
Thank you, Desmond. Then we have, do you advise that consortia allow for agreements beyond the consortium agreement to define ownership of the IP as results are produced?
So this is quite nuanced. I think the best approach we can take is, let's put it this way. If you become involved in the project, IHI is going to ensure, we're going to demand that you sign the grant agreement, which has the IP rules in it. And then you'll also need to sign the consortium agreement, which has the IP rules in it. Now, under the grant agreement, the rule is very clear. Article 16, if you are in the project and if you generate the result, you are owner of that result. And that is beyond challenge. It can't be challenged by anybody. And once you generate that result, you are free to do whatever you want with it. You can commercialize it, you can sell it, you can transfer it, subject to the rest of the rules in the grant agreement. So, for example, you have to give access rights to other people in the project to the results you've generated so they can get their own work done. That's point one. And then also, if you want to transfer that result which you own because you've generated, if you want to transfer that or exclusively license it outside of the EU, then we come back to the right to object mechanism that IHI employs. But apart from that, you're fairly well protected. Now, if you, as the owning beneficiary, decide that you want to put an additional IP bilateral or multilateral agreement in place with the other beneficiaries in the project as to how your generated result is handled, the IHI legal team, we've no problem with that. I would be doubtful as to its utility, but if you really want to do it, you can do it. As long as, and this is somewhere again where we would get excited, as long as it doesn't contravene the obligations that you have signed up to when you sign the grant agreement. And I guarantee your fellows in the consortium, they will want to make sure that you're following the access right rules, for example, in the consortium agreement. So it's possible, it's definitely doable. You can feel free to do it, but just be aware that you cannot, through a separate agreement, somehow neutralize your wider obligations that you have to the consortium and to IHI.
Thank you. Now a question on topic 1, so the IHI European Healthcare Network. The person is saying that an FSTP is requested. As it has a big budget, it may lead to cash flow tension. Can you please explain the IHI payment windows, for example, pre-financing, midterm, final, etc.? For example, for a 60-month proposal, timing and percentages of a total budget for each window.
Okay, what I can do is I can briefly describe how it's going to work, but the specifics that you're asking for have not actually been articulated yet. Because what will happen is if you have, for example, a 5-year project, that project will be broken into a discrete number of what we call reporting periods, and these are defined in the grant agreement. So it's usually 12 months or 18 months. And then the reporting period defines exactly the expenditure that is incurred by the beneficiaries in that specific reporting period. And then obviously then reports are forwarded to IHI. But maybe in terms of payment, which is more relevant at the moment, when the project starts, IHI usually advances what's called pre-financing to all the beneficiaries, which basically means that we actually give for want of a better term, a float of funding to all the beneficiaries to get them started and to make sure that they have enough funding for reporting periods 1 and 2. So this will be much better explained closer to the time. This comes back to my previous point about the fact that the numbers will crystallize much closer and the specific contributions will crystallize much closer. So what's in the topic text is quite general at the moment. It'll become much harder when we get closer to grant agreement signature, and then it will be decided what kind of reporting periods do we need? Do we need 12 months? Do we need 18 months for each? And then based on that, then the budget, the specific budget for the project will actually be articulated as well. So that's the best guidance I can give you at the moment.
Thank you. And we have another question for topic 1. So 25% of the budget is dedicated to operational activities of the network. 75% is for cascade funding. If the applicant consortium has participants that are contributing with access to infrastructure for the selected SMEs, for example, these costs are not supported by the 25% budget for the IHI consortium. Is that correct? Should they be considered to be supported by the FSTP recipient?
On this one, I think that there's going to be some following discussions. So what we would do, the person who's actually asked this, I would ask them to actually send that question to the applicant's mailbox. The legal officers will discuss with our science officers as to exactly how they see this working, and then we can respond directly to you. But I have a feeling as well, just in terms of time that we have here, any response will be lengthy and it's going to take maybe a page and a half. So what I do is please direct that to us by mail, and then we can respond to you in detail at the level of detail that you need.
Yeah, and we can also advise you to watch the recording of the webinar we had yesterday. So we had the webinar on this specific topic, and the budget details were explained there. So the recordings are available on the event webpage on the IHI website. Then the next one is, how do you rank the proposal if they have equal scores?
So for this, we follow the general horizon annexes with several criteria. For example, the first criteria, if they have their total identical score, we go by the individual score. So you remember that there were 3 individual scores, so three individual criteria: excellence, impact, and implementation. We go by the score highest for excellence and then for impact. And then even if this is not possible, there are other criteria like geographical indication of the research mentioned in the proposal, gender balance, and so on and so forth. So when you will access the finding and enter portal, and then you will have access to the full call text, there is a section where it mentions the scoring and so on, and how we discriminate for executive proposal. And then this will be the criteria that we are going to apply.
Thank you, Alessandro. And the next one, is there going to be a brokerage event? So I can take this one. Unfortunately, no. For the two-stage calls, we don't do brokerage events and we don't create matchmaking platform. I can see that in the chat, people are already discussing and matchmaking by themselves, which is good. But I will advise you as well, when you watch the recording that we published yesterday, we have 2 slides on tip for applicants. So there are existing platform where you can find you can partner and find partners. So I will advise you to watch the recording and use the links that have been shared on these slides. Then the next one, what were the actual cutoff scores for funding in previous IHI calls?
I think I'm not sure I completely understand the question. They're not talking about threshold, which is clear. I think what they're basically asking is, what do we kind of need to score overall to be funded? Alessandro, does that look right to you? I think,
yes.
Yeah, I think because, let's be honest, I mean, this is call 13. We've had 12 calls. We've had a lot of projects funded. I don't think, maybe if we aggregate absolutely everything, we could come up with an average score, but I'm not sure how useful that would be, because it really varies from call to call about the specificities. But let me just say, if you want your proposal to be funded because of the quality of the other proposals, your proposal needs to address all of the points in the topic text. It needs to assemble a good applicant consortium, and it needs to score highly. I think that's really all we can safely say. I don't think we can actually supply a number and say, look, if you pass this number, then your chances of being funded are good. But I think your consortium has to be, or your proposal has to be, quite good. Alessandro.
I think we cannot, I mean, giving an average, here probably does not make sense.
Yeah,
It depends also on the quality of the proposal that you're competing for.
Yeah.
So if you are submitting your proposal in a given topic, and then there are like 20 proposals which are highly qualified as well, the competition it's higher. So it's pretty much depends on how many proposals are going to be submitted in which topic, and what is the overall score for all the proposals that is going to get funded. In any case, since it's a research innovation action, it's quite competitive. So the percentage for passing to stage 2, since it's passing only one, is pretty low.
Thank you both. The next one is, how is the alignment of the proposal in stage 1 with the specific capacities and objectives of the pre-selected industry consortium taken into account during the evaluation stage 1?
Do you want to take that one, or will I?
You can kick off. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, again, I think the key point is that it's a 2-stage call, and the applicant consortium who are submitting their proposal, and remember, it's a short proposal because it's stage 1. You don't have a huge amount of space to put in. I think what we're looking for is, there has to obviously be a strategy as to how and this is going to be reflected across the proposals, to how they're going to engage with the specificities and capacities that the pre-identified industry consortium is bringing. And remember, the pre-identified industry consortium is described in a bit of detail in the topic text, and their in-kind contribution, the indicative in-kind contribution, is described there anyway. So I think the key point is that your applicant consortium is going to be scored across a number of criteria. So you need to make sure that you articulate the understanding that there will be a pre-identified industry consortium, that there will be a final proposal, which is going to be 50 pages long, that you have to have a sense of that the applicant consortium themselves aren't going to do everything right. I think that's the key emphasis here.
Thank you. Then, will the consortium agreement be managed by the industry lead?
It depends from consortium to consortium. So I think it's fair to say that the pre-identified industry consortium will have constituent and affiliated entities of the private members, so the companies in there who may have experience with A, IHI projects, and B, the template consortium agreement. So it's frequently the case that, particularly in two-stage calls, that you have industry coming along and saying, look, two things. One, we like the industry template because it ticks the boxes for IHI projects, and B, we have experience with it, and therefore we're happy to take the lead on it. But that's not always the case. So we try to not be too prescriptive in terms of how the consortia run these practical implementation aspects. So what I would say is that it's for discussion. If you're successful in the first round with your applicant consortium, then obviously you'll start engaging with the pre-identified industry consortium, and this is exactly the kind of thing which will be the preliminary discussions. What kind of consortium agreement do we use, what's needed, etc. How do we identify the background, what I was talking about earlier on in relation to IP. So I would say it's not a hard rule. Practice, normally industry has a hand in it, but if it turns out that the applicant consortium want to do this, and if that's the way the consortium wants to go, the legal team, we're not going to intervene.
Thank you. The next one is, what is the time given to sign the consortium agreement? The person says that they often hear from their legal expert that time is very limited with all partners involved.
No, I would tweak that slightly. So you remember earlier on when I was talking about the two agreements, and I said that the IHI executive director is not going to sign the grant agreement starting the project until the consortium agreement is finalized. So in our experience, it's not so much the signing, because the signing can happen within a window after the grant agreement is signed. The consortium agreement can be signed after the grant agreement launches. And usually there's 2 or 3 months to do that. That's fine. But the pressure that the legal teams may be referring to is that there is a reasonably narrow, but in my view, comfortable window to discuss and review and agree the terms of the consortium agreement. So when we have the applicant consortium merge with the industry pre-identified industry consortium, and then they submit the final proposal, and if the final proposal is successful and it's funded, then you have months you have months to basically do all the negotiations which I was referring to. And it's that 2 or 3 month window where there can be a time pressure to agree between all the lawyers the actual substance of the consortium agreement. That's the pressure. Signing it is fine because that happens afterwards, and everything's already been agreed. So but to the broader point, yes, it is a reasonably narrow time frame to agree everything, which is why a template is extremely useful. Because if you were doing a consortium agreement from scratch, it would be stupendously complicated. But at the same time, everybody manages it, so it's doable as long as you start early. And for the lawyers on the call, I think you have a template there. You look at the grant agreement. It's reasonably straightforward. But also for the scientists on the call, you're going to make your legal team's lives much easier if you acquaint yourselves at least with the basic obligations which are in the GA, and you articulate to your legal team, look, this is how I want to mechanically contribute to the consortium. This is what we think we're going to bring, and this is what we expect back in terms of access rights. I need access to that asset from someone else so I can get my own work done in the project. If there's good inter-legal entity communication, and there's good intra-legal entity communication, then it's more than achievable.
Thank you, Desmond. I see that we have 2 minutes left before ending this webinar, and we still have some questions in. So we'll take a last one, but I'll advise you to send them through the applicant's mailbox, and the IHI team will reply to you. So the last one will be, does the IHI legal team assess the consortium agreement content before signing the grant agreement?
No, we would love to, but we just don't have the resources. So because we rely on, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we rely on the fact that the grant agreement is essentially a superior document in terms of the legal basis to the consortium agreement. And the consortium agreement should have language in there which says anything here in the consortium agreement which conflicts with the grant agreement wins. We rely on that, but we do, as I said, insist that the consortium agreement is completed by the final consortium before we will allow our executive director to sign the grant agreement, because otherwise it places too much legal jeopardy in the equation. But that said, if you have specific questions about the application of the consortium agreement against the grant agreement, then you can contact the IHI legal team. We can help with interpretation, but in terms of drafting the actual consortium agreement, we can't really assist. That's the best answer I can give.
Thank you. We have now to end the webinar. So thank you, Desmond and Alessandro, for your presentation and answering the questions. Thank you to all of you for your interest. We wish you good luck with your proposal, and I hope to see you this afternoon for the last webinar for the IHI Call 13. Thank you. Bye-bye.